Hi, everybody. Hey, hey. So, I hope everyone's having a great day. And my name is Geronda Spiller, speaker and coach. And I want to welcome you to Leading in the Moment with Geronda. So, I am live right now. If you are also live, I would love for you to put in the chat that you're live. So, just put live in the chat if you're here and you're joining me now for this live broadcast happening on LinkedIn. I also welcome you to um, share your questions, your comments, your feelings, your thoughts on LinkedIn as well. So I'm going to just check something here really quick. Make sure that this is happening. And pretty cool, pretty cool. All right, so live. Awesome. Welcome, Colin. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining, Joy. Really awesome to have all of you here. So the topic that we're going to be discussing today is what shaped your understanding of a leader. And before I go into that topic, hey DJ Uch, before I go into that topic, I do want to share some wins because I really want to start this off by wins that happened in the week. And I would love to hear your wins as well in the comments of things that went really well for you this week. So, for me, I'm super pumped and excited to announce that I uh, am closing on a house on the 20th. So I live in Seattle, Washington right now. I'm going to be closing on a house in Maine, which has been a huge goal for my partner and I for a long time. So I'm really, really, really excited about that. I'm also really pumped of starting this. I'll be very honest, sometimes imposter syndrome can get in the way of wanting to do things that have been on our minds for a really long time. And so even starting this myself and getting over that imposter syndrome is something I'm really proud of. I'm so really pumped to do this. Hey, Eric, how's it going? So, any win that you had this week, I'd love for you to put it in the chat because I also want to see some wins that you've all had this week too. Um, so, now going into the topic of what shaped our understanding of a leader. And I know that there's many different ways that you can evaluate a leader and what a leader means out there, and which is important because it's helpful to know what a leader means based on your experience and your background. And what brought me to this topic actually is super interesting. If you haven't heard of this show, I highly recommend that you watch this show. So even if you're not a parent, there is a show on NBC. I believe it's on Hulu and streaming on Netflix or YouTube TV if you have that. But it's called Parent Test. And essentially, what they do is they bring different parenting styles across America together and they put them through a set of challenges to decide how do they approach their parenting style to accomplish these challenges. And the goal in the end is actually to be able to pick the best parenting style in America. So there's different parenting styles like helicopter parent, disciplinarian, free range parent, which is you letting the kids explore themselves and do things based on what they want to do. It was fascinating just to see the different styles, and while I was sitting there watching it with my wife, I kind of thought like a lot of the parents were bringing up a similar theme of how they were parented influenced their actual parenting style. And I thought that was so fascinating. And I was like, well, if how you're parented can influence your parenting style, I'm sure that how you're parented in other parts of your upbringing or your environment will also influence how you lead or your perception of what a leader actually is. And especially with all the things that are happening now with layoffs and uh, a lot of what's happening across the world, I figured that can shift and change over time as you experience different moments throughout your life. So I wanted to start this segment with what shaped your understanding of a leader, because that may actually determine why you lead in the way that you do or how you might perceive others as leaders. So if you're with me and ready to get into this topic, just put in the chat ready, and we will kind of go deeper into this. I also want to say before I get started, it is International Women's Day. and I wanted to celebrate all these fantastic women out there across the globe. But I also want to recognize that we need to take action by being allies for women, especially trans women, those that are historically marginalized because of the violence, and there's so much happening to the trans community. But also, there's still a lot of inequity and discrimination happening with women today. So we really have to be mindful of that. So, again, if you're here and you are still with me, put ready in the chat, and we are going to get started on the topic. So, I actually want to begin by sharing where my understanding of leadership came from. And this won't be, all about me, but, got to throw my perspective in there. Um, so I actually grew up in Long Island, New York, and my father was a single father, and he's amazing. He was a firefighter for 33 years. And his perception was, well, Colin, I love that you put Lisa. That's awesome. Um, my father's wants, as many parents want to give you the best life that you can possibly get. And in my purview, I didn't see my father as a leader per se, but I saw him as this really fantastic person. He was very empathetic. People loved that he built community. He was always thinking about other people and their experiences. He was genuinely interested in learning about people. And it wasn't until I started getting older and actually going to his firehouse in Brooklyn, New York, that I started seeing how leadership can work with his captain. And even himself, he drove the fire trucks, he went into the fires. They had to be a very close knit team for what a leader actually, and they needed a leader that was willing to be brave and also be accepting and bring the sense of belonging, which the New York City Fire Department is like unmatched in team building. Such a fantastic thing to watch. So my understanding of a leader was somebody who was super appreciative, gave recognition, helped one another, was there for one another, and and coached people to be effective. And I will say too that my leadership understanding was very transformed as I started approaching and getting into the workplace. So I started seeing different types of leadership styles. And so I felt if I could just be a nice person and I can go in and I can leverage my expertise and just be who I am, I think I'll be okay. So my background is project management and HR and also DEI, and I'm a DEI practitioner today. But it was starting to go against what I started learning about leadership styles when I had my first experience of poor leadership. And this topic is not to be about poor leadership, but it's really important to be self aware of what impacts your understanding of a leader. And then as a leader yourself, unpacking that for yourself. So I had one experience where, as a Black queer woman, um, a lot of times when you go into a workplace setting that is very formal and professional, you start to feel you have to mold yourself into whatever that environment is. So I've worked at companies before where I felt like I had to straighten my hair and I had to wear a suit and I had to um, lie about my socioeconomic status so I can go to these really great fancy places. And I started seeing leadership be more of those people that would tell others what to do, that would um, not only just tell others what to do, there wasn't really much of an understanding or empathy around um, just how you are as an individual. How can I best support you to be successful? It was, you work for me, you do these things for me, and that's what needs to be done. And I kept seeing people with this similar personality start to get promoted. And so I felt I had to completely change myself, um, and start telling people what to do, and uh, not be as big of a team player, but go after my agenda. And I remember being told, which at the time, young in my career, like first time in my career, I took this in as truth, is that you need to do whatever you need to do to get to the top. Nobody's going to care about you. And that scared me because that was completely against what I learned growing up and what my father taught me. And I was like, well, I guess I'm in business, and if I want to get promoted and I want to make a lot of money and I want to have these really nice things like a nice house and all of these resources, I have to act in this certain way. And it was so misaligned from the type of person that I am. And it was wildly uncomfortable. So I then started to diminish myself. Um, and because of that experience, I started getting confused because then I would go to another company and I would have a really compassionate leader who's really cared about me individually and cared about the team individually and really wanted people to do the right thing. And then when I would try to tell others what to do, it was very misguided of, Johnny, you need to be more of a team player. You can't act like that. And it was going back and forth in companies. I would have really compassionate leaders and then ones that were more on their own agenda. And so I say all this and I share my experience to say I started off knowing that leadership is about compassion and coaching and meeting people where they are and understanding each individual on your team to then my values and everything shifting based on what I felt I had to do to fit in many different spaces. So when I got clarity, that's when I knew whatever organization I support and work with, I need there to be an understanding of the leadership that fits well for me. Um, and so I hope that this resonates in some way, and I'll go into why self awareness is important and the different actions as well. But I do want to make a quick plug as well. Um, that I'm going to be starting this newsletter where I'm going to start sharing more of these insights and sharing more of this of my experiences and eventually bring on people who I think would be really fascinating to interview in these spaces as well. So I'm just going to drop quickly in the chat a link to my newsletter if you're interested in joining. So there is my newsletter. And I appreciate you kind of sticking through my experience. And so, not going through this, your understanding of a leader is so important, but not just for how it's impacting your team. You need to have self awareness as a leader. And I started to recognize that a lot when I started getting that clarity of, I don't think this person realizes how they're affecting other people on the team or in the company, or I don't think this person realizes how they're affecting um, their relationships with different people as a leader. What could be going on? And so when I talk about self awareness types, there is this internal self awareness and this external self awareness that leaders need to be very much in tune with. The internal is, what do you value? What are your passions? And what are your aspirations? There's so many of us, or even leaders in themselves, that are just not clear on what they value and what their passions are, and they're going and they have these different priorities, whether it's family or children or parents. I'm a caregiver to my spouse, and so there's so many things that are going on that we don't take time to sit down and really reflect on our internal self-awareness of what we value. And the external is how other people view us. So how do other people view us? There's a study or research out there that says at least half of all managers underachieve significantly because of lack of self-awareness. And that study is actually showing that when leaders feel that they are leading in a certain way and being successful towards their team actually comes back and there's a disconnect of how their team views them. So, one example could be, I might think I'm this fantastic leader and I'm very committed to my team. I'm always coaching, giving feedback, welcoming them to challenge the status quo, and welcoming them to different opportunities. And then I get 360-degree feedback or a survey given out to my team, and my team is saying I'm never around, I'm not supportive, I don't give feedback. That big disconnect is so crucial for you to then take a second and say, externally, this is not being viewed well. How can I make this a reflective moment for me? Because maybe there's things going on at home that are impacting your leadership, or maybe you're just genuinely not aware, and um, try not to get emotional about that awareness as well. What can you do to then be effective towards your team and achieve that. So when you think about self-awareness too, there's different types that I was researching, and my partner and I were having this conversation the other day. And there's those people who are really clear on who they are, um, like very clear. So let's see, I'm going to do clear on who they are. This is one type. And there is another type of awareness where they are aware who they are and seek others' opinions. That's another way that they go about that as well. There's the third aspect, which is they don't know who they are. Um, they're not very aware of their values. They don't know who they are or how their team sees them. And they are stuck and frustrated, but maybe aren't open to getting the feedback that they need to be getting. So that's number three is don't know and are stuck and are frustrated, aren't aware of who they are and how it impacts people. And the last is focusing on simply just how they appear to others. And what's challenging about that one is then you start to become a people pleaser. And I have been there. So um, it's really really important to start recognizing how clear are you on who you are, uh, and do you challenge the different views that people give you? Are you open to it and really wanting to improve who you are? The other one then being as well, uh, you're aware of who you are, but you seek that feedback. You want people to be able to give you that feedback. Or you don't know who you are, how your team perceives you, and you're super stuck and frustrated, and you need some feedback and some support, but maybe you don't know where to begin. And then you are focusing on how you appear to certain people. So going back to my story, when I was talking about how I appeared to my teams and I had to shift my personality and who I am and how I lead and what other leaders are like, I was in that I have no idea who I am or how people perceive me. I'm super stuck and I'm frustrated. And I had to take some time for myself to seek coaching to really get grounded on what I value and why I value it, and how can I then take those values and make decisions that will help me be an effective individual, so in my personal life, but also will influence how I lead in the workplace. And doing all of that is so important, and knowing where you fall in one in those four is really critical too. So leading is just not in the workplace. I have to remind myself of this all the time, and your title does not mean that you're not a leader either. So you need to start focusing on how can I build my leadership skill set now? Maybe I fall within one of those four different areas, and I need to focus on that for myself to build that as well. So, what can leaders actually do that leaves a transformative understanding of what it is to be a leader? Because you want to set the right example for um, for those that you are leading. So again, if you're still with me, put ready in the chat. You can put ready or you can put leader. I'll let you choose this time. But put one of those in the chat, and so I can make sure that you are still with me and still ready. And I'll go through different ways that leaders can start to be that example that they want to be and start reflecting on their leadership style and what could be impacting that. So, one, focus on both those internal and external self awareness assessment. Look at your values. Look at not only just what you value, but look at your passions and your aspirations. Are those aligned? Do you feel that you're really clear on that? If you're not clear on that, maybe that's seeking out a coach, which I do some leadership coaching as well to find that awareness. But think about also how people are perceiving you, and not just your team, but how is your family perceiving you? How are your friends perceiving you? Um, I was in a point in my life where I was super grumpy all the time, and then I was super grumpy at work all the time, and I thought I was doing really great, and people were like, "Geronda, you're kind of being an a-hole. You need to check yourself. So I got really clear, and now I'm back to, myself. So looking at both internally and externally, become really, really self-aware of how your experience impacts your leadership. Get feedback as much as you can from your team. I know that many of us are in super growth organizations or going through layoffs or restructuring or all of these different factors that are impacting our organizations. But this is a really beautiful time to be able to now be self aware of how your leadership practice is showing up during these really, really hard times. When we're laying people off and we're letting people go, they're going to remember how they were treated. I remember when I was laid off and it was not a very good experience, and I will forever remember that experience. I remember when I was laid off and it was beautiful and I felt okay and supported and acknowledged and accepted through, especially with my feelings. So looking at that, and then acknowledge and reflect on how you react in pressure and how it impacts your leadership style and other people. I remember I had a manager who was the calmest person I've ever met in my entire life. I was like, I don't know how this person was so calm through literally everything. Um, and they were saying to me, I that they take time every day to reflect on how the day went for them. What were things that frustrated them? How did they react to it? Um, how did people think that they approached certain things? And my whole team, including myself, would always say, like, you handle things so well. You don't get emotional about things. You see the positive. You see that we can figure it out. And if we can't figure it out, we work together to make a solution. So, are you that type of person? Or be real and be honest with yourself. Are you that type of person that just freaks out and starts yelling at people and you're slamming your laptop closed, or you're reflecting on um not reflecting, you're putting a lot of your feelings onto your team or to yourself? These are so important to acknowledge for yourself. And I'm not saying that you can't have feelings. Like, you're going to have feelings. You're not going to have perfect days, but really start to think about how often that happens and start asking your team these questions. So, I know that we are starting to slowly reach the end of this first segment. And again, I am going to put my newsletter link in here for anybody who might just be joining. Uh, but a lot of this is going to be captured in these newsletters that are going to be coming out monthly, where we're going to be talking about how you can reflect. And I'm going to be giving resources and questions that are reflective. Um, so, really, it's important in understanding too, which is the last piece, how you perceive yourself as a leader. Is it aligned with how others perceive you as a leader? And ask them what leadership means to them, and then see if you're aligned with that definition. Maybe there might be a gap in their understanding of what a leader is. um, I think the toughest question I've ever been asked is, not question, but the toughest comment that's been said to me as someone when I was super new in my career is, you have to own your own career. And I was like, what in the world does that mean? So I remember I had a leader who really broke it down for me. You have to be okay to ask questions, speak up for yourself, learn your role, all these different things. And that's really important in terms of leadership. So reflect on what you're really good at and what you're not so good at, and be okay with what you're not so good at, and go after your strengths. Because what's really important in this leadership aspect is always working on the systems that are impacting your team and you as well. Systems across the company or systems that are happening at home. So when you join, or if you choose to join my newsletter, I have a resource. I have something that is a document where you can type in or you can print it out and you can handwrite it. And it's a reflective document on your leadership style, how well you know your team and how well you feel you are as a leader. And so that is the end of the segment. I would love, love, love for anyone who is either joined late or if you're still here to just put one thing that you've learned from this session today. Doesn't have to be big or huge. You could even just say, reflect on my leadership. But I would love to learn one thing that you took away from this. And if you are going to be catching the replay, please, you can put replay in the comments. or what have you. And I will also be uploading this to my YouTube channel as well for you to see that also. So, for those of you who said Happy International Women's Day to me, thank you so much. Happy International Women's Day. Please go out there and learn of ways you can be allies to women. And that does include trans women, especially trans women of color. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you so, 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 so much for joining. And I really, really appreciate you joining Leading in the Moment with Geronda. With that, have a fantastic day wherever you are. And I will see you soon for the next one happening on the 22nd, where we're going to dig a little bit deeper on the definition of psychological safety and give a different perspective to it as well. So, see you all soon. And with that, I say peace.